I think I'm live. Hello, hello. For those that don't know me yet, I'm Lindsay Benitez, and I do four key things. First, I help managers and leaders, founders, learn how to be more confident communicators. Second, I help organizations learn how to care and build authentically inclusive environments. Third, I help HR leaders through coaching and development. I'm an HR for HR coach because HR is busy taking care of everyone else. Who coaches them? I do. And last, and certainly not least, which is why we're here today, is I support first generation leaders know that they belong in any room they find themselves in, and even the ones they're not in yet. And I help them get there. So if you're new to my LinkedIn Lives, I usually do these with amazing guests, different leaders, founders, first gen trailblazers that inspire me, have supported me in my journey, have inspired me throughout my journey, and I know will inspire you. And the truth is, I did have somebody lined up, and they unfortunately couldn't make it. And I had two choices. I could cancel and skip it, which is actually what I did in November. I totally skipped it. But then I thought, what is something that actually terrifies me so much is talking solo. I thrive in groups and presentations and settings, but talking solo, especially in this kind of medium where I have no idea if anyone is listening or will listen. Well, I'll see the numbers later. But I want to invite you, if you are here with me, are listening live, please, please, please give me some signs of life and share any questions, comments you might have. I can see them. The thing about LinkedIn, though, is that I do know that if you share comments, it shows up and your name shows up. If you want to do something more private and direct message me on LinkedIn, I'll pull it up in a second so that I could see your direct messages. But I'm doing this specifically for my first gen friends. And if you're first generation and listening, that usually means you were the first to go to college in your family, the first to be born in the US, the first to join a corporate setting, the first to pretty much do a lot of things in your family that previous generations could only dream of. And since the beginning of my, journey into this, and I'll talk a little bit about my journey today, I knew I wanted to support first generation leaders. And I've had this idea for a program specifically for first gen. And it's been months in my mind. And one thing that I kept coming to is during this time, are people going to be nervous to say that they're first generation, that it might affect their families, friends, etc.? And that was months ago. And that fear is still alive and well today. And that fear has been alive and well for decades and beyond. So no, I'm not going to pause. I'm not going to stop talking about empowering my first gen friends and leaders because we are so incredibly smart and capable and belong in any room that we're supposed to be in. And that's what we're going to talk about today, or I'm going to talk about today, being first and limitless. So some call me a coach. Some call me a leader, some call me a trainer, speaker. I do a little bit of all of it, but more than anything, I want to show what's possible when you are willing to put in the work and be brave enough to have these kinds of conversations. And I recognize my privilege so much by being able to be confident enough to have these conversations, brave enough to have these conversations. A lot of people can't. And I fully understand that. And there's so many different ways to take care of yourself, to speak up, to speak out, to do the work, to raise your awareness. And we're going to talk a little bit about a lot of that today. I don't usually talk a lot about my own story. I love to share frameworks and teach and talk about best practices. But I wanted to share some things that I've never really shared publicly. A couple stories, which I like to call the 1,000 paper cuts that led me to do this work. And that led to a pretty public breakdown, meltdown, whatever you want to call it. I have some friends on LinkedIn that, if you're seeing this, you were there. Some others that were there and were like, what is happening? No idea. So I'm going to share a little bit about that too. But first, I've talked a lot already, but first, I want to start with the most important question I ask in any of my workshops, client meetings, any speaking I do. I always, or these LinkedIn lives, I always ask my friends, how are you feeling? Really? And I don't allow good, fine, or busy because everybody says that. And we just keep it moving, right? No matter how we're feeling. So I'm going to ask myself and check in with myself. How am I feeling? And I honestly, truthfully, I'm feeling overwhelmed. And usually when I have that feeling of overwhelm, it means that I have a variety of different feelings conflicting at once. And for me right now, there is just so much sadness and anger and frustration. But more than anything, I'm feeling empowered. And I want to lead with that feeling. I want to hold on to that feeling because we also can, the language we use can affect our feelings. So if I talk more about empowerment and focus there, I can hopefully override a lot of the sadness, anger, and frustration that I'm feeling. So I choose to lead with empowerment, at least for the next 23 minutes. One thing that's come up a lot too is, don't get political. You don't want to be political. And what's the truth is, I can't get political because my whole existence is political. I'm first generation Latina, which means for me personally that my family immigrated here from El Salvador, and I was the first to be born in the US. And they immigrated here in the middle of a civil war. My parents, each on their own, as teenagers, running from a civil war, perpetuated and funded by the US, by the way, came here and met here, and I'm here. But more than anything, everything about me and who I am and what I'm able to accomplish or not accomplish is political. So I just want to say that there. One thing that I heard recently, the great Jane Fonda said, I don't care about right or left. I care about right and wrong. And I fully believe that. And what's interesting right now, and we'll talk a lot about our filters, our beliefs. We all have our own version of our own stories. We all see the world through such different eyes. And like, for example, have you ever said, I don't get why they don't get it. I don't see how they don't see it. Because they don't have your experiences, they don't have your story, they don't have the filters that you see the world through. So what I like to focus on is sharing awareness of those filters because trust me, I've had the conversation since I was blue in the face about politics and diversity and inclusion and all of these different areas, but I can't change anyone's mind that's not willing to listen. All I can change is my own mind, hold on to meaningful conversations, do my best to stay curious and learn from others and understand that my perspective is not the only one. So when I get frustrated and angry at the news, I also remember that what's happening right now isn't new. It isn't. So it's different, that's for sure, but it's not new. A lot of the base of what's happening is not new. So I've been there and I've had those conversations of like, why don't you get it? I don't understand. And that didn't serve me. What serves me is making sure that I can focus on what I can control and help empower you to raise your awareness, lead with care, which is what I talk a lot about, lead with empathy and with curiosity. So, a little bit about my story and my 1,000 paper cuts. I actually learned what it means to hide in the workplace when I was 16. I was working at a fast casual restaurant as a cashier, and it was exciting. Like my first job, I wanted to work, ready to be there. And I had 3 different incidents when I was 16, by the way. First was somebody came up to me and said, "How can your name be Lindsay?" Because I had my name tag. "How can your name be Lindsay? Aren't you Hispanic?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but your name's Lindsay." "Yeah, but you're Hispanic." "Yeah." And I'm like, "Can I take your order?" That I already knew that my name isn't traditionally Hispanic, whatever that means. But that was the first moment where I'm like, "Whoa, people actually question my name." And if you must know where it comes from, my dad was a huge Bionic Woman fan, Lindsay Wagner, so that's where it came from. Second, and this one was where I really learned to hide, was somebody came up to me at the counter and started with, "Yo quiero una hamburguesa." And I just looked at him and I was like, "What?" I speak fluent Spanish. I know what he was doing. "Yo quiero una hamburguesa," he repeated. And I, in that moment, just chose to keep going with it. And I said, "What, sir? I don't understand." And he looked behind me at the cooks and said, "Well, everyone here is Mexican. I'm assuming you speak Spanish." And I'm like, "No, sir, I'm Filipino." I'm not, but I've been told I look Filipino. So I went with it and I hid because that felt safer to me in that moment. That was 20 years ago plus, and I remember that like it was yesterday. The third one was actually not about me being Hispanic, but more about me being a woman. And I had my first report, my only report actually, my first report of inappropriate behavior. And I will never forget, I had a meeting with the district manager at 16 years old, a meeting with the district manager, and they were like, "Oh no, they didn't mean it," even though it was months of evidence and so on. They didn't mean it. "But would you like to move locations and stores?" "Why do I have to move?" And I will never forget that too. And maybe that's why I ended up in HR. I'm not sure. But I spoke up for myself, but I also knew to hide. And I share those 3 stories that I've never really shared before as much because that was just the beginning. I have had so many different instances throughout my career of feeling like I needed to hide, feeling like I didn't belong, feeling like I was going to be outed as other. And all of that hits your confidence. My gosh, it makes you want to hide and not speak up and question if you belong in the rooms. Thankfully, at that age, for whatever reason, I had enough confidence to, do my best to brush it off. But like I said, 20 plus years later, I remember those all 3 of those incidents like it was yesterday. As we move along, well, the other, thing that's interesting is I actually just spoke at LMU yesterday, my alma mater. And I had some first generation students in the room. And I was sharing a lot of what I wish I could have heard as a student. So much. And time is flying right now. So I just want to make sure that I call out 2 quick things that really helped me. One, I was the first in my family to go to a different country except El Salvador. When I was growing up, I had the privilege of going back and forth to El Salvador to visit family, which I attribute with really making me an empath and leading with empathy because I could see different perspectives, different culture, different ways of living. So I've had that since I was little. And I am so grateful to my parents for that. But I studied abroad in Germany, which opened up my love for travel for sure. And I will never forget my mom, love you, mom, if you're watching this, said I couldn't go. And again, whatever confidence I have inside, I'm like, I'm going. And I'm grateful that I did because having that worldview is so important. having different perspectives is so important. And in those moments, though, again, I was one of very few Latinos going in that program, and everyone around me had already been to Europe or knew they were coming back. I had no idea if I would ever go back. I knew it was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I that moment of I'm different than my peers for sure in college was one big one. Another big one in college was that privilege game. If you've played it, you know what I'm talking about. Oh, it hurts a little. But I was president of my sorority and we played the privilege game. And I am a student at LMU, just like everybody else. We're all presidents of our sorority and fraternity. And when we did this game, if you don't know it, it's like step forward if you have parents who aren't divorced, step forward if it was an expectation that you'd go to college, step forward, all these different types of privileges. And at the end of the game, I was at the very back. And what's interesting is family and friends will tell you that I am very privileged. Even my name's a privilege. So many pieces are privileges, but in those settings, and that game was also played as an HR director, and I was still in the very back. And I share all of that because those are 1,000 paper cuts that hit us. And as first generation leaders, we already are the first to do the thing, first to go to college, first to be in those corporate boardrooms, first to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all those moments make you question, oh my gosh, do I belong here? Am I supposed to be here? Everybody else is so far ahead. How can I ever catch up? Unfortunately, and I've seen this play out way too many times, and the reason I'm doing this is because over the past few years, I've had very similar conversations with so many different people, and we all feel very similar fears. We all have very similar limiting beliefs. If I ask people in a room, and I asked, in class yesterday at LMU, and I do this in other rooms, raise your hand if you've ever felt that icky feeling of imposter syndrome. And then everybody raises their hands. How can it be real then? How are we all imposters? I refuse to believe it. I believe that you build confidence. You don't need to wait confidence. I believe that you build confidence by doing the thing. And as first generation leaders, we have so many different limiting beliefs that we're not even aware of until we start to unpack and do the work and understand where we're coming from. And it takes time. It takes work. And I've done a lot of the work and they still creep in. Who am I to be talking about this right now? Who am I to share this information? Do I belong in these rooms? Are people only going to hire me because I'm Latina? Actually, thank you if you do, because you're opening doors that honestly, historically, were not available to me. But then it's up to me to show why you hired me, to do the work, to show you that I didn't have all the privileges that others had, but I am here and because I'm first generation, I am hardworking, I am strategic, I am resilient, I am resourceful, and I'm deeply empathetic. And my first gen friends, so many of us share those same traits because we're first gen, and that's actually a privilege and a good thing. And I try to teach that being first gen should not be a limit. It should be a reminder that it's an opportunity to create whatever you want. People around you have not done the things yet. What a gift for you to create new paths and do things that no one in your family has done before. I have done in my life a lot of things that are on most people's bucket lists, and I did them before I was even 30. And I say that as a way to show visibility of what's possible, not as a brag. And I say that because I also have done so much in my life and never felt like I was good enough or that I was doing enough. And somebody yesterday, a student, shared this with me. first generation student who said, I never feel like I'm good enough or that I'm enough. And that was a gut punch and also an empowering moment to say, yes, you are. You are more than enough. And this is why I do this work. Because there are so many students, leaders, people deep in their careers, deep in age, deep in experience that still feel that. And we stay quiet and we hold ourselves back because what are others going to think? Or those rooms don't look like me. Or I'm the only one, I'm not meant to be here. If you're in the room because you worked for it, you deserve to be there. That's it. The problem is that you need to believe it. Others might say things. I have, again, going back to the 1,000 paper cuts, I have had people say things like, oh, you're so articulate. I'm like, yes, I am. Thank you. And in my head, I'm like, but why are they questioning it? And on and on and on. I can share all my paper cuts in a second. Or not in a second because there's too many. But what's interesting too is in my work as an HR leader, I have been talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion well before 2020 when all of a sudden it popped up as different roles and people were bringing out different teams. And I want to say I really started doing the work between 2016 and on. But it's exhausting trying to educate others why diversity matters, why companies and organizations and teams are stronger, more creative, more strategic when they're diverse. But I do believe that. Trying to educate why equity is necessary because not all of us have had the same opportunities. So, how can we bridge the gap with resources, with awareness, with education to help people have? They'll never have equal opportunities, but as close to so that they can succeed. I truly believe that. And inclusion, if you're in the room, you deserve to feel safe and respected and included. I believe that. So it kills me when I see and hear other coaches or companies saying they're scrubbing DEI from their websites or they're scrubbing DEI programs because of the climate. This work just started. We have so much work to do, and I double down on it because I believe that we are so much stronger when we celebrate our differences. There's a lot of things that hold first gen leaders back. And one of the things is that we don't have safe spaces to have these types of conversations. I've tried to have these conversations with people that just will never understand what it's like. I don't love that saying, walk a mile in someone's shoes. That's what it means to be empathetic. You can try, but you will never know what it's like to be me. And I will never know what it's truly like to be you. But I can ask questions and I can understand that we each have our filters. And I can do my best to communicate thoughtfully, strategically, empathetically, so that we can have meaningful discourse and discussion. We don't do that enough. So, one of my missions this year and beyond is to create safe spaces for us to have these conversations. Because what's interesting is I've had a lot of people share their experiences with me. And I'm like, I wish you could hear what you have to say. Or when I do pull people together at our first gen and they realize that they have very similar experiences, we feel less alone. So I have created this program called First and Limitless. Again, with this idea that we just need to be aware of these stories, these beliefs, these limiting areas that we've created for ourselves, this box we've put ourselves in, to understand that we can create and design whatever we want with the right tools, the right resources, the right opportunities to network. And that's what I want to create. like I said, I've done the trying to educate why diversity matters. If you don't believe that it matters, I can't change your mind. But what I can do is empower those of us that already know that it does and help us get out of our own way. There's so much more I could share about this, but a couple things I want to leave you with. One, people need to hear your story. It is terrifying for me to be talking here again. I have no idea who's going to hear this. This is very public. It's going to be on my link. It's going to live on my LinkedIn. It's going to live on my YouTube. And there is fear. One thing that's really interesting is I always proudly said, I'm born and raised in LA. Proud Angelino. And I feel like now I have to emphasize I was born and raised in LA. And I know that, again, that's a privilege for me. So I'm going to use that privilege to continue to do this work. And if you're feeling that fear, and I know so many people that feel the need to carry their passports. I've been carrying my passport card since a couple years back, honestly. And this isn't new. It is different. But what can be better is the way we talk about these conversations, the way we create spaces to have meaningful, respectful, thoughtful, curious conversations. And I hope you do. And in case you listen to this and you're not first generation, a lot of these experiences are very shared and they're not unique. But a couple things I want to, again, leave you with is whether you're first generation or ninth generation, we all come from immigrants. Whether we choose to believe that or not, we all do, except for the natives who we have wildly disrespected. That's just the truth. First or ninth generation, we all come from immigrants. The second truth is that we all have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So as long as I have my life, as long as I have my liberty, I will pursue happiness. And I hope you do too. We have so much choice if we choose to believe that. We have so much opportunity if we choose to believe that. We have a right to be happy if you choose to believe that. And if I can support you in any way, whether it's just from you listening to this, my messages are open. Feel free to ask me any questions, throw them in the chat. If you could use some additional support and want to join the First and Limitless program, I invite you to do so. Message me to learn more and I will share more information. But more than anything, I hope that you focus on learning how to care a little bit differently. Care about yourself, learn how to communicate, raise your awareness is what this stands for. Recognize your gifts, recognize and celebrate what you bring to the table. And above all, lead with empathy. Empathy is not weak. Empathy is actually the hardest thing we can hold on to and we can develop. Empathy is a strength. So that's what I teach. I teach how to care. And I hope you do care about yourselves too and invest the time, invest the energy, spotlight the good, celebrate the good, because there is still so much good in the world if we choose to see it. Okay. I just talked for like 30 minutes straight, but I thank you if you're watching this. I thank you if you're watching the replay. I am grateful, so grateful. That does not escape me that this is what I'm able to do. This is my way of giving back. And if you have any questions, you know where to find me. My website is lindsaybenitez.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Lindsay Benitez. Yes, that is my name. Or I'm on Instagram at Lindsay B Coaching. If I can support you individually, your organization, or your company, I would love to partner together to just make this place a little bit more inclusive, a little bit more confident, a little bit more empathetic for everyone. Thank you for listening. Bye.